Hi, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, you have my January wrap-up and my February TBR. Disclaimer at the start, I filmed the two halves separately because I wanted to prep my February TBR and I could film that, and January is ending, or ended, I should say, on a Wednesday, middle of the week. So I couldn't film that part yet because I had a few more books to finish. The first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to go over some overall statistics. Hopefully editing me won't be lazy and will pop them up while I'm talking about them. I do have them written down on a piece of paper that I will be referring to. So overall, I read 23 books this month, which is on the low end for me. Towards the end of last year, I was averaging 30. 30 was like my minimum. This month, I haven't gotten into reading as much. I've wanted to read, but I've gotten distracted by other things. I've still managed to read 23 books. That totals approximately 7,900 pages read. That number does include my audiobook hours, which were 45 audiobook hours. Now, I estimate that because I listen at a faster than 1 times speed, and the only record of the amount of time that it takes for me to listen to an audiobook, the record that's in the Storygraph or Goodreads is the actual runtime of it, so I usually estimate that. So it may be a little less, a little bit more than 45 hours. So one other thing that I want to track is the difference to my owned TBR. Because as much as I love having that closet full of books, I cannot maintain that at the growth rate that I had last year. I'm okay with having a growth in the number of books in my TBR, but I can't have that same rate that I had last year. So all told, this month I brought in 25 books to my TBR. That seems like a high number, a higher number than I expected. But then I remember that we celebrated Christmas in January, and so a good number of those books were from my January gifts. I have my stack of my January unboxings because I'm still waiting on a Lumicrate, even though it's February 1st, and yesterday on January 31st, they said they shipped out my order. Here in front of me, I have 11 BookBox books. I consider that a win. Now, technically, I have 2 more that will probably go on the January list because I have 2 books that I haven't unboxed yet. I have 25 total bringing into my TBR. On the plus side to my TBR, the positives, out of the 23 books that I read this month, 18 of them were from my owned TBR, which is a much higher percentage in the past. That does mean that I have a net positive of 7 books. If we take Christmas out, I would probably have a net negative. So I will consider that a success. When it comes to genre, fantasy was my number 1, but only by 1 book. I read 6 fantasy, 5 historical fiction, 3 mystery, 3 sci-fi, 2 contemporary, 2 literary fiction, 2 nonfiction, although 3 if you count the 1 memoir, and 1 romance. So I read a very wide variety of genres this month, which I really like. When we come to author status, I read 1 debut novel, I read 13 that were new to me, and 11 that I had read before. When it comes to the source by which I read them, I read 13 of them via audiobook, 3 via ebook, and 9 physically. As far as the targeted audience, I did not read a single YA book this month, which is quite surprising. I don't think that's a trend that's going to continue, especially with the SEASL news. I probably will be putting out that video next month because they released their list a whole lot earlier than I expected. But I read 8 middle grades and 17 adult books. A large part of that is due to the fact that I'm trying to read through the Goodreads Choice Awards nominees that I had on my shelves, and most of those are in the adult categories. Well, all of them are. As far as the publication year, I didn't write down every year, but the vast majority, again, because I'm reading through those Goodreads Choice Awards books, is 2023. 12 of those. 64% of my books I counted as diverse reads, either by author or subject matter. The next section I'm going to talk about are the books that fulfill the various goals that I have. The first of those is Buzzwordathon. I read I Was Born There, I Was Born Here. For that, the buzzword was there. Next, we have my 24 in 24, and it does continue on a theme. I read Minor Detail and A Problem from Hell. Then we have my series that I plan to start this year, And the first one that I read is A Natural History of Dragons by Marie Brennan. Next we have 2 series in which I am continuing in the series. So I did not start, but I did make progress. That is Three Keys, book 2 in the Front Desk series, and The Unusual Suspects, also book 2, but in the Sisters Grimm series. Then I finished the Moendale Mystery series. Of those, I have only 2 physically, book 2 and book 3, and I read book 4 via audiobook. And then I had my Rick Riordan Presents Imprints project, and for those, I made progress in one series with Tiger Honor, which was book 2. A lot of book 2s this month. And then I started a new series, Paula Santiago and the River of Tears. As far as my other goals go, we had arcs that I read, 3 of them via ebook, so I do not own them physically. That was The Enchanted Hacienda, Boomy's Boombox, and In the Company of Radical Women. That is one that I actually DNF'd. For the first time, I'm keeping track of those. I DNF'd 2 books this month. But those are 3 of my arcs. And then I have physical copies, although I read one of them on ebook, one of them on audiobook. The Broider book, also DNF'd this one. Can now return that to the library. And The Pomegranate Gate. Then we have a book that actually fits into both of those other categories that I had for the month. I had it as an arc, and it also was one of the Goodreads Choice Awards nominees, and that is The Jasad Heir. This was in the romantasy category. It should not have been. I really enjoyed it. Then we have the other books that I had in the Goodreads Choice Awards. Of those, I read 7. So 7 of the books that I read were for that project. That was a lot more than I thought, but I got through a bunch more towards the end of the month than I thought I would. The first of those that I read this month is Yellowface. This was actually the first book that I picked up this year. That one was in the just regular literary fiction section. Also in that section, we had The Invisible Hour and Banyan Moon, the last book that I finished in this month. Then we had the historical fiction section. I read all 4 of the books that I had in this category. We have Looking for Jane, The Secret Book of Laura Lee, Let Us Descend, and the winner of that section, Wayward. I managed to read 2 category winners this month with Wayward and Yellowface. And then I did have one other book that I read this month that was not part of any of the goals that I set out in my TBR. That was just to fulfill a prompt for Pokeathon, and that is this Doctor Who comic. Next, I'm going to go over my ratings for all of these books. So my overall average rating for the month is 4.2, as can be seen by this absolutely massive stack of 4-star reads, one of which is falling over. So let's go in order from lowest to highest. So I'll start with the books that I did not rate. 2 of them were DNFs, 1 was not. The first of those that I did not rate is this Doctor Who comic. I just enjoyed it. I did not feel like analyzing it, rating it, etc. It's good. I'm keeping it. The other 2 are my DNFs. One of those was an e-arc in the Company of Radical Women. The other, also an arc, but I have a physical copy, The Embroidered Book. I did not rate those. This is probably a really decent book, just not the book for me. Other than that, I did not have anything lower than a 3.5-star read. I did not read any truly bad books this month, which is fantastic. I had 3 3.5-star reads. One of those was an e-arc, The Enchanted Hacienda by J.C. Cervantes, my one romance for the month. Then we have The Secret Book of Laura Lee by Patty Callahan Henry, The Invisible Hour by Alice Hoffman. Both of these fairly well written. I'm not going to get into reviews, but these are the only ones from the month that will not be making the cut onto my actual shelves. Then we get into my 4-star reads. We have Three Keys by Kelly Yang, Tiger Honor by Yoon-Ha Lee, The Jasad Heir by Sarah Hashem, The Ghosts of Tupelo Landing by Sheila Turnage, The Unusual Suspects by Michael Buckley, The Odds of Getting Even by Sheila Turnage, Paula Santiago and the River of Tears by Taylor K. Mejia, Looking for Jane by Heather Marshall, Let Us Descend by Jasmine Ward, Wayward by Amelia Hart, and Banyan Moon by Thao Tai. Then we move into another sizable stack for being 4.5-star reads. We have Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. You'll see this in a moment, but my first 2 books, my physical book and my audiobook, 4.5-star and 5-star. So I started the month off well. Next we have A Natural History of Dragons by Marie Brennan. We have Boomy's Boombox, and I forget the author's name. That was an e-arc that I had. We have The Pomegranate Gate by Ariel Kaplan. Then we have book 4 in the Moendell Mysteries, The Law of Finders Keepers. We also have I Was Born There, I Was Born Here by Mourid Barghouti. And now we have my 5-star reads. Both of these were extremely heavy, not easy reads at all, but well worth it and phenomenal books. We have one that strikes me outside of my comfort zone in the style, in the writing style, the style of the book itself, and that is Minor Detail by Adina Shibley. And then what is probably going to be my #1 read, nonfiction read of the year, A Problem from Hell, America and the Age of Genocide by Samantha Powers. And now I'm going to flash back to my February TBR. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about my TBR for February. And it worked really well in January to have a handful, like basically half of the TBR as quote-unquote obligation reads, and the other half to be more mood reads or of a selection of things. I just remembered a book. I'm going to go grab it. I think this is going to be the last for a couple months of this particular type of setup because March I think is going to be Romathon, and April is Magical Readathon. So I'm still going to have my quote-unquote obligation, my list reads for those. But on those 2 months, I'm going to focus more on the readathon books. But that being said, I've had success, so I'm going to try as much as possible to follow that for this month. So let's go through the quote-unquote obligation reads. First off is the book that I'm going to start a series with. Before I get to that though, there is one readathon that I'm going to be participating in, but I'm going to try to fit my other books into that, and that is Polarthon from JW Reads. I'm going to join the Arctic Fox team, and the bonus prompt for that, so it's basically you're trying to collect snowballs, and it's for every 100 pages, and the bonus prompt, one of the bonus prompts is, I don't think I have any Polar Fantasies to read, which is fine, but the bonus prompt for the Arctic Foxes, which is led by Beth from Beth Bartholomew, is blue on the cover. So I've tried to pick more that are blue on the cover, and that's just for a week, the first full week of February. I don't know how many I'll read that week, but because of that, I chose Winter's Promise. This is my one YA series to start this year. This is a fantasy book. There are worlds that are set up in the air. This is translated from French, so I am intrigued to get to this. Then I have my Buzzwordathon book, which also helps me continue a series, and that is Room to Dream by Kelly Yang. This is book 3. I really need to get book 5. I don't know if she's going to continue on from that. I have up to book 4, but I really, really like the series, and there's blue on the cover if I choose to read it during Polarthon. But that's my Buzzwordathon book. The prompt was positive word, so dream, positive word. Then we have my 24 in 24. This is also going to help with my Goodreads. I need to take the sticker off. It's going to help with Goodreads, and I got the audiobook Hold In, and I'm going to read Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers. That's the first one of those, and then the other one, because it is February and because I really, really, really want to read this book, Black AF History. I'm going to see if I can get an audiobook. If not, it'll take a little bit longer to read physically, but I'm really excited about this. Then the one that I think I may or may not finish, but it's my series that I'm attempting to clear off my oldest series on my list, and that is the Al Capone series. I'm going to give it a try. Actually, I'm going to find out what the order actually is. I do not know what the order is to this series. This is a series that I started back in my MAT, and it was the first book in here. Al Capone Washes My Shirts, I think, is the first book in it. So it's been a while since I have read those books. It may not be for me. If I read one and decide I'm not super interested, then I'll DNF the rest of the series, but that still would help me clear a series off my list. Then we have the book that I went up to get, and that's because I realized I want to keep going at least a book a month from the Sisters Grimm series because it's so long. So I'm going to read The Problem Child. This is book 3 in that series, so that's going to help me continue a series, and then to finish a series.
Good morning, Jenny. How can I help?
I'm talking about series, not Siri. And she decided to speak. Then to finish a series and make progress in my Book Rewarden project, I am going to read the Gifted Clans series. I've read the first one. I wasn't necessarily a fan of that, but I still want to read all of the series, and I'm going to go into it with a more open mind. And so I did, these are hardcover. I did get these through Book Outlet, but we have Last Fallen Moon, which is book 2, and Last Fallen Realm, which is book 3. This one just came out, I believe. So, 2 birds with 1 stone. I like trying to do that. All right, so those are my obligation reads. It looks like a lot of obligation reads, even before we get to even before we get to the optional ones, but a lot of these in that stack are middle grade, and I may or may not read 2 of those. Now, to get to the other ones, a lot of these you will have seen in January's as well, although I remembered when looking through my NetGalley list that I had 2 others of the NetGalley books that I that I hadn't pulled over before. I made really good progress, as you saw before, but I still want to make my way through it. So these, I'm still going to try to prioritize the NetGalley arcs that I have physical copies of, but if I read just a regular arc on my Kindle, that's still going to count. I'm not going to go through that whole list because there's like 35 more. My percentage is up to 72. So I'm almost to that 80% mark that they recommend. But again, once again, these are the ones that I have, at least that I presented last time. So this one is not an arc, but I have an arc of book 2. These are by Margaret Peterson Haddix. So this is the first one, clearly from the cover. It was written in the 90s. And then this is the arc that I have. Running Out of Time, Falling Out of Time. We have Charming by Jade Linwood. We have Hope in the Valley. I'm really excited about this one. I probably will get to this one. Then we have Her Radiant Curse. And this starts the ones that I have physical copies of that I own. And the other 2 that I forgot to pull before, and this one, I really want to read this one because of how floppy it is. It's The Hexologist by Josiah Bancroft. I have the start to his other series on my series to read in 2024 list. And then we have Guardians of the Dawn, Zara by S.J. Jones. So those are the arcs that I have physical copies of that I'm really behind on arc-wise. But as far as the Goodreads Choice Awards books, I would hope to get through these fairly soon. I don't think I'm going to get through all of these in February. The other caveat is at least one of these may be read in January. Maybe 2, because when I'm filming this, I still have 3 more days of January. I have not picked the next physical book that I'm going to read. 1 or more of these may be read in January. I would love to get through these in February so I can move on to other ones and try to do other new release ones, but we shall see on that front. So the ones that I have left, I have my nonfiction read, which I'm probably going to try to prioritize for February, because the only other nonfiction that I've held up is this one, and I want to have a minimum of 2 nonfiction per month, and that is The Wager by David Gran. Then I have my one sci-fi, and that is Some Desperate Glory by Emily Tesh. Then I have one other romantasy book, and that is The Hurricane Wars by Thea Guanzon. Then, let's see. So I just realized of this stack, I am currently reading this one. It's very short. I'm going to have this finished in January. So I'm going to take that out of the stack. Out of these, I have 2 in the lit fic category. I have The Wishing Game and Banyan Moon. They're fairly short, so I may be able to get through most of these. And then I have 2 that were in the thriller mystery category, although a lot of people disputed that, and that is The River We Remember and Happiness Falls. I'm excited about this one. I hopefully will get to this in February. There are all of the books that I hope to read in February. It is still the shortest month, even though this year it is a little bit longer because this year is leap year. Thanks so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next one.